Welcome back to the Chicagolandians, a casual Chicago sports podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Cunningham, joined by my co-host, Connor Cunningham.
We're two brothers from the Chicagoland area talking about the latest and greatest in Chicago sports news.
Welcome back to another episode of the Chicagolandians. I'm your host, Patrick Cunningham, joined as always by Connor Cunningham.
Hello.
If you're listening to this podcast now and thinking, what is this beautiful sound that's hitting my ears? I am now the proud owner of a new microphone. This is actually the same microphone that Connor got last week or maybe 2 episodes ago. So there's been a serious upgrade to the Chicagolandians setup. And for those on YouTube, you might be seeing a new format because we are actually next to each other. We're back in Illinois for the first time since, December. This is our first in-person podcast recording.
Yeah, the listener, if you can notice the chemistry that you can just feel oozing out of your headphones right now, it's because we're sitting right next to each other now, which is a lot of fun. I can reach over and tap Pat's computer, can hit him on the face or something like that. So, you know what? I'm excited to be here. It's excited to get the gang back together. And yeah, let's have a great episode.
On today's episode, we're going to be covering some of the latest updates in the world of the Chicago Bears, and then also some general NFL news concerning the NFC North. We're also going to be recapping the Bears' second preseason game against the Buffalo Bills, talk about some of the highlights, some of the key moments, the key players and performances. We're also going to cover the first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks, kind of our thoughts on it, things we do like, things we don't like, and then finally talk about training camp for this week, specifically highlighting the Bengals joint practice that we just had, and then looking ahead to our third preseason game against the Bengals. So, yeah, excited to get into it. How about you, Connor?
Let's get it started, baby. Yeah, let's get into it.
Hell yeah. The first piece of news that I wanted to cover is Nate Davis, Montez Sweat, Tyreek Stevenson, and Kyler Gordon are all back from injury. This is worth noting because this whole training camp, most of our heavy hitters, our big players on defense have been injured. And even on offense, too, with Kieran Amagaje has been hurt. I mean, Nate Davis, obviously, yeah. Nate Davis. Unfortunately, Jaquan Brisker is actually still injured. He's actually gone 3 weeks, I think, without practicing. So hopefully at some point he'll be back. But it's just nice to see those guys come back.
I agree. I think training camp and just the season in general, injuries happen. It's kind of unavoidable. It's good to just have people back now. Edmonds has also missed time, but just to have everybody back is exciting. And, you don't want to have injuries even before the 17-game season has started, right? Especially when you're just hitting your own guys. Yeah, glad to see, most importantly, Nate Davis back, just because I feel like he's the guy who's got the spot to lose.
I was reading interviews today where someone asked Nate, do you just like not practicing?
That's what I
like to not
That's
practice?
what I've wondered as well.
Yeah, and I'm reading some of our show notes. You have this quote, 670 the score. He said himself, I know I'm a very special player.
Yes.
And what are your thoughts on that?
So he said, I know I am a special player. You threw in very special. So he knows he's special.
Now, special player. Now, that's interesting because I feel like on our 5-man line, I'd say 3 of the positions are locked up. The left side, pretty locked up, and then right tackle, pretty locked up. So I would say Nate Davis's position of right guard,
unlocked.
Very unlocked.
Yes, I agree.
So for him to say I'm a special player, now I guess special player, that could be interpreted a couple ways. So
Absolutely.
Maybe, I'm sure he thought that had a positive connotation, but we'll see.
Nate Davis has been one of the most disappointing signings from the Ryan Poles era because most of the linemen that Ryan Poles have signed have been pretty like poverty linemen of, you sign this guy, Lucas Patrick or Dozier or whoever the other guys that we try to fill in are. You add all these guys for 1-year contracts and they're all terrible. But Nate Davis was one of the first linemen that we signed that we put actual money into. And we were excited about him. There's this quote of him from 2023. He was an ESPN top 25 free agent, and he was young at the time. He's still young now. He's 26. I believe he's 27 now or 28. He was a talented guy for the Titans and had good tape, and he just has not been able to put it together for personal or physical reasons, and it's just been very disappointing. You don't want to call a guy's character into question, but you're kind of forced to when you just don't see it on the field. You're like, why are you not practicing?
It's like, what's going on, man? What are we doing?
And Eberflus even called him out. Not him out specifically, but it talked about availability being so important for the team. He's one of the biggest factors for our line moving forward because he's a guy who has big money associated with him. Like Coleman Shelton and Ryan Bates are centers that we're trying to convert into guards, right? and we didn't put him on big contracts. We gave Davis a big contract, so it'd be really nice to get that to turn around. Because center is just not as important as the right guard. You can hide behind center, but right guard, I feel like, is our biggest hole that we have left on this offensive line.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see. Good to have him back, and good to see the rest of the gang kind of coming back from injury. Next piece of news we have is not Bears related, but it is NFC North related. We have Vikings young new quarterback,
Hot quarterback, yeah.
Illinois LaGrange Park native J.J. McCarthy is actually going to be out for the season with a torn meniscus that he tore in the preseason game. Did you have a chance to watch his preseason game highlights? He looked pretty good.
Pretty solid.
I mean, he had a rough start. He threw a pick right away, but bounced back. I think he threw for like 170, had, I think, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like
he was airing it out, too.
He looked pretty good. I think he caught a lot of flack in Michigan for not being a passer and just handing the ball off. But man, that sucks. He's going to miss the entire season because he has to undergo knee surgery. And I feel like just a torn meniscus is not the way you want to start.
Especially as the injury rolled out. Like, he finished the game, and then he kind of came up in the first week of practice coming back that he had knee soreness.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of evaluating going from there. Like, there's been meniscus injuries before. I remember, I think Larry Fitzgerald had a meniscus injury where you're just, trimming it, and you can come back in a few weeks, where there's other meniscus surgeries that require a huge, bigger timeline. So I feel like it was kind of up in the air on what was going to happen, and then it just broke that he was going to be out for the season. I don't think he's a guy who can just start right away. And I feel like this would have been a really good season for him to at least sit a little bit. Now he kind of has to go through rehab again, and it's just not the right start to his career, which is always sad. I mean, especially sad when it's a guy who you feel is a little closer to home.
Yeah.
Just sad to see a career get off to that slow of a start.
It's a little bit different situation than the Bears, where we obviously need Williams to perform right away. But I guess the Vikings have Sam Darnold, who I saw Justin Jefferson complimenting his arm talent recently, which, I guess he kind of has to, but it's certainly not the end of the world for their season. I still think the Vikings might be in for a tough season. With Sam Darnold, they lost a couple guys. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
I do think they're the worst team in the league, in the North, for sure. But Sam Darnold actually didn't play that bad for the Panthers before Baker came over. I think it was 4-2 or something with the Panthers. He's had okay seasons. He played fine with the 49ers when he came in. And I feel like for the Vikings as a whole, I don't think they're going to be in a worse spot that McCarthy's not going to come over.
Yeah, for sure. In the long term, probably won't be a big deal if McCarthy ends up being who they think they are. Just what's one season. Still scary though. You can kind of see how people get hurt, battle through injuries, and
just
then
doesn't get started. Yeah,
just fade off for the rest of their career. So hopefully that's not the case for JJ.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, next piece of news, Connor. I'm gonna toss it to you. You want to cover this?
For sure. So I think last week or the week before we brought up Matt Judon, pass rusher for the Patriots. Some of his more famous seasons came with the Ravens. He's a 32-year-old pass rusher, and he had contract issues with the Patriots. He's holding out from camp. And then the last time we talked about him, he said that he had returned to practice. He had a talk with his coach, Jared Mayo, about returning to practice and being more of an active player for the Patriots. So we feel like contract negotiations were going in a more positive direction. But yesterday, Matt Judon was actually traded to the Atlanta Falcons for a third-round pick. So the Bears did also offer a third-rounder. So I think it was between the Patriots to choose between the Falcons and the Bears, which you could look at and be like, wow, they must have thought the Bears were going to have a way better season.
Yeah, too dangerous.
I mean, you can't pick past 25 or 26. That's too late of a pick. So you'd rather take the Falcons pick. But it's just tough to miss out on a guy like that. Hassan Reddick is also still out there. Funny enough, Hassan Reddick used to be on the Eagles, requested a trade this offseason to get traded to the Jets for a third-rounder. He still can't get a contract figured out, so he's requested another trade from the Jets.
He hasn't even played a game yet with the Jets?
No, hasn't played a game yet. He hasn't been to camp either. He is another person that could be on the table, especially because he was traded for a third-round pick. The Bears are still clearly interested in addressing this edge rushing position, not just with Booker. So I feel like maybe he's a guy who's still in play, or I know Justin Houston is still available as well, who used to be a lot of great productive seasons for the Chiefs and the Ravens. So the summary is that this edge rush position is still something that the Bears are trying to fill. And maybe Hassan Reddick could be that guy, or maybe we'll just have to roll with Austin Booker.
All right. Well, that'll do it for our NFL news. Moving into the next section, we're going to talk about that Bills game against Bills v. Bears. We kind of shellacked these guys.
Yes, sir.
Won 33-6. Didn't let up any touchdowns. I believe the 6 points were all field goals. And we kind of shut down Joshua Allen. I mean,
never heard of him.
Yeah, you heard of him? Despite missing Brisker, Gordon, and Stevenson, I think Johnson was probably the only guy playing, right? We were still able to show a pretty good performance. You know, it's preseason. So we're also the only 2-0 team right now in the NFL.
No one's talking about that.
No one's talking about that. So, I mean, you know, that's pretty good. Probably the best way to start preseason, I think.
One of the best for sure.
Yeah. Obviously, this is the first time we got to see Caleb Williams perform since November, I think was his last game at USC. So people were...
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was exciting to see him play for the first time in so long and see how his game translates to the NFL. He had 7 passes, played most of the first quarter, I would say. I thought he looked very comfortable, very clean plays that he had. No real issues, no like false starts, delay of games, no fumbles. Nothing really out of the ordinary. And we still got to see a little bit of the Caleb Williams magic. He was 4 for 7 for 95 yards, 101.8 passer rating. He missed Odunze and DJ Moore. Both of them had drops, but then he actually missed Odunze in the back.
Komet had a drop too, right?
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. The Odunze one didn't count because that was a penalty, actually. So it was Komet and DJ Moore had drops. So it could have been, 6 or 7 for 95. Could have been 7 for 7 with a touchdown, but I thought he looked very, very comfortable, looked dynamic. He had a good rollout play where he threw the ball deep to Cole Kmet. He had this shifty shovel pass to DeAndre Swift.
You can say it.
It looked
You
like
can
that.
say it.
It looked like Mahomes, right? Kind of like this no-look pass.
Yeah.
Obviously very, very exciting to see him play.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really cool to just see him actually out there. I don't think it could have gone a whole lot better. Obviously, he could have thrown all 7 of these for touchdowns. That could have been better. But I think it was very cool to see how this creativity that he has, how it's coming into the NFL. I feel like that's what everybody made a big deal about at USC. And obviously, you could see that there's issues with it. But I feel like you can clearly see the use of it in the NFL level, like him finding ways out of the pocket on that throwaway that he had, or even staying alive in the pocket to find Swift. Of course, that rollout that he had to Komet was just incredible, like getting the edge rusher off his feet and out of the throwing lane by using that pump fake, and then just fitting that ball in on a rope. You could see all these arm talent factors that you saw at USC just like come alive there. You can see very clearly how his game translates. I think he had good showings of being in a system, sitting in the pocket, feeling comfortable there. Overall, super excited about it. Obviously, yeah, it's just preseason, but couldn't be happier with how Caleb Williams has looked so far.
Yeah, absolutely. He also had a big, I think, 13-yard run where he went down for a slide, which, you'll hear every NFL announcer talk about, the slip and slide drill from Hard Knocks. Still wasn't a great slide. Still looked like
it looked awkward. He needs to practice it more.
Yeah, still looked awkward. Could have hurt himself there, but this weekend, we also got to see Justin Fields in his Steelers jersey for the first time.
Same old Justin Fields.
And, yeah, just like comparing the two, I feel like you never had... I mean, there were obviously so many wow moments with Justin Fields, right? But I think Caleb Williams' first completion to DJ Moore, and then also that rollout with the fake, and then the throw to Komet. I don't think either of those throws could be made by Justin. I think throwing on the run like that, being able to square your hips up and throw it out of rhythm, I think already kind of shows what type of player Caleb Williams is and how different he is to Justin Fields and to just a lot of quarterbacks out there. He's really a unique talent.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't be more excited. Yeah, you see that off-platform ability of how he's able to right his body to get the ball where it needs to be. I feel like it was really great. You definitely saw all the things that people have been talking about on the field there, which, yeah, you couldn't be more excited for. With Fields' debut, yeah, you definitely saw some of the same things that you saw in Chicago, with feeling like a little unaware in the pocket, of taking bad sacks. And of course it's preseason, but still taking these bad sacks that you saw 6 months ago.
He's a 4-year vet.
It's like, how are you still not seeing that, man, especially in preseason? And there's a million factors that are different, right? You don't know like what the game script was or the talent that they're playing. I still feel like Fields didn't look too inspiring, but still rooting for the guy. I know preseason football is probably very scripted, like in terms of what they're going to run. So with your point about talking about how everything was running very smoothly, I guess it probably was a very scripted game plan that they were running. So maybe still can't make a decision on that until the actual season starts. But I feel like overall he looked very controlled. I know Komet talked a lot about his demeanor in the huddles of the actual game versus in practice, how you could tell like a second gear was turned on or he hit another gear. I feel like all these things considered, you can see that things are starting to come together, and I feel encouraged so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Another player that really stood out from the game was actually our other rookie, Austin Booker, our defensive end out of Kansas. Austin played 32 snaps. He recorded 5 total tackles and 2.5 sacks, along with 3 QB hits. He was a monster in this game, especially after watching Hard Knocks, when you saw kind of more of a first-person perspective of him playing. God, he just looks so dominant.
He's a beast.
And also, when you watch a defensive end play, God, they're moving a lot. They have to do so much. I saw, this is when he tripped the quarterback, throws the tight end, spin moves, runs into the guard, has to spin out of the guard, QB's rolling out, he has to dive, hit his legs.
Yeah.
You're moving around a lot,
impressive.
And you have to think about so many things. But yeah, he was very good.
I know. At U of I, I play a lot of edge rusher at intramural football.
It's tough.
And it's very tough. It's a lot of running. You got to have that dog in you to keep fighting after the quarterback. And I think me and Booker share similar things in our game. But you look at Booker, he's so long. He's a big, long dude. He's got these long arms, a very big frame. It's looked great so far. And I mean, I think he's had 3.5 sacks now in 2 games, which is pretty great, right? If he could produce this type of play in the actual season, that'd be a super success.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and Hardy both looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Hardy also had 2.5 sacks.
Did he really?
Yeah, he had. I think
he had 8 sacks, right?
8 sacks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think he's getting less buzz because Hardy isn't a rookie, right?
No.
So it's more exciting to see Booker do it. But yeah, both of the defensive ends looked good, which is nice to see that hopefully we'll have someone to complement Montez Sweat. And then the last thing, takeaway that I wanted to point out was I saw some comments from Richard Hightower, who is our special teams coordinator, talking about the kickoff rule and some of the analysis that they did on the kickoff rule. It's pretty interesting to see after a full week of preseason games with the new rules. They said the return rate, so, every time there's a kickoff, how often does the returner actually return the ball? Last year it was 22%, and this week it was 80%. The theory was this is going to encourage more people to return kicks, and we're already seeing that, it's clearly having that effect.
Yeah.
And then also the starting field position after each kickoff for this week was the 29-yard line.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy. Yeah, you're practically starting from the 30. I mean, 5 years ago, if there was a touchback, you'd start at the 20, right? I think it's going to lead to more exciting games, probably, certainly higher scoring, and just make the game more exciting to watch, I think is one of the goals at the end of the day. So, I thought that was interesting to see the type of effect this rule change has had.
Yeah, it's cool to see. This is a huge rule change that came in, and it totally changes this aspect of the game. Although it'll be interesting to see how Vilas kind of fits in as the returner.
So we're gonna get into that.
We'll hit on that, but
we're gonna get into that. So that's all I got for the preseason game. Connor, do you have any other points to talk about? I mean, obviously we got to see a revenge game from Mitch Trubisky, who, again,
soft revenge.
More than Fields. I mean, to think 2018 we had Mitch Trubisky throwing for us, and now we've got Caleb Williams. It's pretty
You wake
nice.
up in cold sweats thinking about Mitch Trubisky still being the guy.
And, I mean, you think about those rosters that we would throw out there. Darnell Mooney as our wide receiver 1, Mitch Trubisky, or Nick Foles throwing at him.
That's right, baby.
Oh, my gosh. We're at a better time. We're at a much better time. Thinking of our past corners.
Who are some of our receivers back there?
The guy got his chain ripped off. Obviously, A-Rob.
Oh, Javon Wims, Allen Robinson, Mooney. Do you remember Demir Bird?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some weird guys. Not studs.
Anthony Miller.
Yes. I have a soft spot for Anthony Miller, though he did have a hard fall off for the Bears, I feel like.
But moving on, we haven't really talked too much about Hard Knocks on these past episodes. We've alluded to it with Kevin Donahue in one of our recent episodes we talked about. But now we're 2 episodes in, and we kind of just wanted to kind of have an open discussion on our thoughts of how it's been so far. What are our thoughts? So episode 2 of Hard Knocks, first of all, off to a rocky start.
Yeah,
episode was late.
What the hell, HBO?
What's up with that? It's supposed to drop at 8 p.m., right? 8 or 9?
8 Central Time, yeah.
8 Central Time. We turn it on 8. Click, 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 click. HBO, click. Hard Knocks, click.
Ruh-roh.
Watch episode 1. Where's episode 2?
WTF, buddy.
Where's episode 2? So we had to wait 30.
We had to wait over an hour.
Over an hour. our lives are pretty hard. Like, this was a huge...
Hey, man, people could have lost their jobs that day crying that they don't know where they're going to be the next day. And they think, well, thank God I have an hour of Caleb Williams and Roma Odunze singing their songs to their teammates. And then they come home and realize that, they don't have this because of HBO. No, I mean, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Finally, the episode did drop, and I thought we got to see some cool things with this episode. I mainly highlighted the...
Well, so back to it. Do you think somebody had forgotten to hit the upload button? Or do you think it was just slow going through like the internet tubes? Or
I would honestly be very interested to see what the editing process looks like for these episodes. It's hard for me to imagine that they didn't have it done Tuesday morning.
Yeah, you think they're still like chopping it
but
together?
Like maybe they were still doing it Tuesday morning. I mean, like they had clips from Saturday's game,
yeah,
right? I don't know. Maybe they're still editing it. Maybe they had errors. Maybe there was like copyright stuff that they had to fix. Regardless, it came out late. Hopefully, no one
HBO
was
do
fired.
better. Do better. I'll be watching for episode 3. I'm not joking.
But some main takeaways from this episode, I think, some of the main storylines we heard, highlighting Velus Jones, one of the more interesting players I think we have on this team, for better or for worse.
Interesting is an interesting word. Controversial, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the draft pick was controversial. Pretty sure
There's a 3-letter word I could think of that I won't say here to describe Velus, but...
Yeah. What, bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, we drafted him when he was like 24. Like, he was about to turn 25 or something. Raised a lot of eyebrows. But he is this speedster that, when he has the ball in his hands, can make plays. But the problem is he can't really get the ball
in his hands.
If you look up Velus Jones, the first photos you'll see is one of the ball bouncing off his face on punt returns. Just like the guy in punt returns, kick returns, catching the ball in general, has a hard time holding on to the ball. It's very fast, but this storyline highlighted his kind of position switch. He's moving to RB. I think because now we have such a good wide receiver core, it's kind of hard for him to find a spot. So we're just still trying to keep him on. Maybe Poles is afraid to let him walk.
He's afraid to let him walk?
Or like afraid to admit that was a bad pick.
Yeah.
So we're still trying to make
He should
it work.
switch to DB, man. He should switch to defensive back. That type of hands that he's got and the speed that he's got. And he likes to lay the boom too. Maybe he could find a spot at DB, but
He could do that. So it was interesting to see his storyline and then how that translated. I thought it was interesting how they kind of did a spin on his performance in the preseason game. I kind of thought he had a bad preseason performance. He did score a touchdown, but he also dropped a kick return.
he picked it up though.
He did. Yeah, he picked it up. And
He didn't fumble it.
yeah, he didn't fumble it. And then fell on his first carry as a running back.
Who hasn't? Who will you say that you have never fallen before?
I'm not an NFL running back though.
Just
And he did score a touchdown, and he averaged 5 yards a carry for running the ball. So he did actually end up having a pretty good game.
Do you remember sitting in our dorm with Ryan and going through the draft and you saying we drafted Velus Jones and me freaking out about it?
Why? Because you're like, who is that
I was
guy?
like, who the hell is this guy? What is Ryan Poles doing? I was already pissed about whatever. I was mad about the draft picks that we already made, who have both proven to be good. But I was freaking out about Ryan Poles getting too cute, and then they drafted freaking Velus Jones. And then he said he said in the interview, man, you guys just got to see this guy in person. You guys just got to meet this guy.
And we've seen him.
And we've met him. We've seen him not in person, but I've seen him on my TV every Sunday for 3 years now, and it's just not it. Just not it.
It's nice to see that he's still had some success in the game, and hopefully you don't want to see these guys get cut, especially a 3-year guy on the team. But complementing his storyline was Evan Wheeler, another running back kind of competing for the same spot. Connor, you want to go with this?
Yeah, Evan Wheeler, he is a pretty cool guy, or a cool story. He is a current med student, or is he putting his med student career on hold right now?
He got into med school, I think. Yeah.
So
he seems very smart.
He's a very smart guy, well-educated guy who's interested in being a doctor. But right now, he said he wants to take advantage of his youth, pursue a career in the NFL. I mean, who would not choose to do that? I'd rather be an NFL running back than a doctor, but that's just me. The episode focused a lot on him and the running back coaches, their relationship with each other, which I thought was interesting. Maybe they just weren't showing his relationship with other backs. And maybe he just has a different relationship just because he's really on the roster bubble. But really, a lot of ball busting between the running back coach and Wheeler.
And it was strange. He seemed kind of isolated. It seemed like he was kind of singled out.
Just in the corner getting his balls busted, I feel like.
Yeah.
He was really getting chewed out a lot, but I guess that's probably how NFL practice is. You're an adult, you're a professional, you're getting paid to do this. A lot is expected out of you. But it was really cool to see him perform well in the game. He had 2 touchdowns. He is really fast. Like, he's an explosive and pretty fast running back. You could see some of the talent from him just on display. So this is one of the stories in Hard Knocks that I feel like is really happening right now between Vilas and Evan Wheeler. It's usually common in Hard Knocks to be battling for these final roster spots, and I feel like you haven't been able to find that yet because they haven't really focused on right guard at all, just because Nate Davis isn't on the freaking field. So I feel like this is one of the only spots that are really having a true competition right now. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah.
I still think it's weird that there's so many names now that I'm thinking of at running back where you would say
we've got like 5
Swift,
guys.
Herbert, Roschon, Vilas, Wheeler, Homer, Blazingham.
God, I forgot we had Homer.
That's like 7 guys. That's insane.
A lot of running back.
So I don't know what's going to happen there. Look, you don't want to see a guy lose his job, but also, hey, man, this is a performance-based industry. I can't say that Vilas has performed up to this point. Like, it's not like we're waiting for Vilas to have a bad season to cut him because he's had 3 bad seasons, but you'd like him to pick it up. And I think Wheeler is a guy who maybe will push him to be better. Or maybe Wheeler will just come out right and take his spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Those storylines are like why you're watching. You don't really watch
that drama.
Yeah, I mean, it's different with the Bears because we have this rookie quarterback. But, like, when you watch the Lions Hard Knocks, like, you're not really concerned about Jared Goff's spot, right? The reason why Last Chance U is exciting is because there's pretty high stakes, right? Like, these players are fighting literally for their jobs, like, for their
careers,
families, for their careers. Like, this is it for them. And it's the same thing with Hard Knocks. It's like these are players that are super on the bubble, and even just making the team is big for them. Not even having success in the league, just like getting a spot is a big deal for them. And I feel like we've been missing that a little bit this season. So I think the other thing that they covered in the episode, they showed us a little bit about DJ Moore and his relationship with his daughter. I thought that was cute.
2 very cute daughters. No.
Son and a daughter,
yes,
right?
2 very cute kids.
Yeah, 2 cute kids. His daughter had a funny moment when DJ Moore is warming up for the game, when he's got like his visor on, he's all swagged out. His daughter is calling over to him, asking about a character in a movie, the Bumblebee from If, and DJ Moore, like, has no idea what she's talking about.
He said, "Dad, what's the name of the Bumblebee in If?" And DJ Moore just says, "What?
What?" Yeah, and it was just funny. Like, even in the game, she's still like trying to tell him about her day and like what she's thinking about. It was like a very funny interaction.
You can see that rattling around in his head too, where he was really racking his brain for what
he's just trying to
talk.
He's just trying to answer his kids' questions.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I thought was interesting with this episode was seeing the Jalen Johnson, Keenan Allen kind of battle. Wouldn't really say battle, but Keenan Allen talks about how good Jalen Johnson is and how he's had a tough time getting a catch on him the whole offseason, which I think is awesome. I mean, I feel like the past year and a half, Jalen Johnson's rise has been
meteoric.
Oh, insane. And the fact that we now have this corner that has been locking down Keenan Allen, seemingly kind of locking down T. Higgins, like pretty good against T. Higgins in the joint practice. Pretty exciting to see that we've got this corner that is so dominant right now.
Yeah, I feel like he's really getting his confidence right now, which is everything in being a cornerback. I feel like he's playing at a high level, and he knows that he's playing at a high level. And I think it's cool, seeing him beef with one of the bigger players in the league, of Keenan Allen. Keenan, I know there's been another story that's coming out about Keenan Allen and his weight, of him coming in 20 pounds overweight. So he weighed in at 230.
He usually plays at 210.
Last year he played at 210 with the Chargers. So I believe he officially weighed in at 230. So I don't know if this is something that's a problem or not. I mean, it seems like a problem, and I know reporters have made comments about Keenan looking a little slow, which I feel like hasn't really been issues with receivers I've heard about before, besides like Kelvin Benjamin. So I don't know if this is going to become a bigger story, or maybe it's just like false reporting or something, but I don't know. If Keenan Allen is starting to deal with like weight issues, something to watch for sure.
Yeah. We talked about his game doesn't rely on like explosiveness, but it still relies on like effective, clean route running.
He's got to move down the field.
Right. You got to be like shifty and be able to run fast in short bursts, right? So I guess that's concerning. I would hope that, a veteran, someone that's one of the best in the league, knows his body and knows what he can do. But also, like, I think you brought up when I first mentioned this, like, this could also just be the end. His body's just kind of slowing down. It's harder for him to maybe stay in shape. I don't know. He's 32, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is nearing the end, but
Or you could be like, I'm Keenan Allen. I'm a great player. I can play at 230.
yeah. So
Or
I
it's
think
you're
like
so
he knows
confident in
himself.
yourself. But
I
maybe
got
it's the
you.
other way of being like, I think I can play at 230 because I'm Keenan Allen. I'm talented. But then maybe you can't in reality. You don't realize that you're going to have the speed fall off.
Good
So,
point. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see it on the field. Let's see how it actually translates. Let's see if he's actually 230, if he actually looks slower. I would never call into question his work ethic or anything like that. Maybe he isn't even weighing at 230, so I don't know if this is a story or not. But let's wait till we see it on the field.
Yeah, man, he just had a big move. Just left his team that he's played on for 10 years.
20, Chicago deep dish pizza. There's a lot of
he's
good
adjusting.
food there.
Yeah. There could be a lot
20
of things
pounds.
going
It
on.
just adds on to you. In the summer, though, to be adding 20 pounds, that's kind of when you got to keep that weight off of you.
That's when you think you're shredding, but he's bulking.
He's bulking. Yeah,
He's gonna do a winter shred.
he's gonna be shredded for winter.
Yeah. Are there any other? Oh no, you go.
Well, so I was gonna say with DJ Moore, we talked about it before, but he is a really funny guy. Like when
He's so funny.
he caught that pass from Williams and then got pushed out of the sideline. We were saying like, "Oh, I like football. Like I like football." And he's like screaming on the sideline. He's such a funny guy. When he was in the film room and they announced that it was gonna be 3 and out, he like sunk in his chair and was just so mad. He's just a really funny guy, and I feel like Hard Knocks is really, I don't know, just showing me how his personality or how fun of a guy he is. And I feel like I'm really starting to like DJ Moore a lot.
Yeah, he's a good guy. We saw Roma Dunze do "Kiss Kiss" by T-Pain and Chris Brown.
A good
That was
song.
interesting. That
Better
was
than
cool.
Caleb's, I'd say.
Better than Caleb's
hate that, yeah.
performance.
It was funny when Vilas was in the receiver lines talking to Rome. He was talking about being a running back, and he said, "Oh, Percy Harvin." He's like, "Rome, Percy Harvin used to be one of my favorites." And then Rome was just like, "Yep,
That's a good one.
that's a good one." And then went back to practice of being like, "Vilas, can you shut the hell up? I'm trying to practice right now." And Vilas just being like, "I don't know, man."
That was a relatable thing for practice. I feel like sometimes I feel like
You got
you
this
see
dude
that-
talking to you right now, and be
Yeah,
like,
and
"Can
you're
you
just
just not talk
Dude,
right now?"
I don't care right now. Like I'm trying to focus on that.
Awesome. Oh, a really good player was one of your favorite players?
Yeah,
man.
cool. Yeah.
And then they kind of just swiped in with that. Vilas just snuck in with, "I used to have a pet ferret." Because, like, I knew a kid who had a pet ferret. I remember a kid who had a pet ferret. It was not like Vilas Jones, but I don't know. Pretty funny story.
Interesting storyline.
Yeah. But I think that's about it for Hard Knocks. Yeah.
Yeah. But so, I mean, how have you liked it so far?
I think it's been pretty good. Honestly, I have not watched a lot of Hard Knocks beforehand, but I feel like there's been a lot of really cool clips that I've seen from Hard Knocks before that I could think about, like Brian Cushing against when he was on the Texans with like Alfred Blue, them going back and forth in practice, like beating the crap out of each other and really getting mad, or like
The DeAndre Hopkins,
Hopkins, yeah, when he was against Carter for the
former Redskins.
yeah, and the Texans. I feel like it's been a lot of just like music montages and a lot of game clips from the sideline, which are interesting, but I feel like it hasn't been a lot of like, I wouldn't have been able to see this without watching Hard Knocks. I feel like a lot of this is just like camera crews are on the sidelines of practice putting together cooler montages and putting clips behind. It shows that they have the same access. They only have a limited access to certain rooms. Like they just have access to the large team room where people have to go in and sing their things. They have access to the big conference table where they talk about like who's going to play in this game. I feel like they just don't have a lot of access to really interesting scenarios. And also to your point, like about the camp battles, I feel like it would be really interesting to hear more about the QB camp battle that they talked about. And I know they've hit on it a little bit with talking about Reed getting his game rained out, but like I feel like Brett Rippon would be a little more interesting to focus on just because, like, obviously you want to hear about Caleb Williams because he's the new guy and it's super interesting. But also Caleb Williams, like, how much do you need to see about him? We've seen so much of him from the media.
Yeah, it gets a little boring.
We also know that he is going to be the starter. There's nothing that he's going to show right now that's going to make him not the starter. And you know that he's talented. So showing cool clips of him being talented is awesome. But also, like, Brett Rippon has been on, like, 8 different teams in, like, 4 seasons. He's been a journeyman guy. I'm sure he struggles a lot with like his family or not knowing where he's going to be each season or moving around a lot. I feel like coming in to compete with a ton of young people where he's competing against 2 rookies
Yeah, a
and a
22-year-old.
second-year,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like
Being a veteran. I feel like that's an interesting storyline. I don't know. There's just some very interesting things that I feel like I would want to hear more about that I just aren't. So
yeah, it's very positive. There's not a lot of like failures, people messing up, or like people like, wow, this guy's really messing up his chance right here. I keep going back to it, but like Vilas, like dropping the kick. Obviously, it's not a huge deal. He picked it up and like got 12 yards, but like in prior seasons, they would really like, I don't know, kind of buzz that up and be like, oh, this is kind of his chance to like, he's kind of messing it up. Or, there are position battles going on. Like you hit on right guard. Center, we're also competing at. Defensive end, like Austin Booker, that competition is happening. And
defensive line, too. Like
the whole defensive line.
Technique?
Exactly, right? And, like you
Pickens and Dexter, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, the backup QB. It would be interesting to see someone like Tyson Bagent and all those guys talking about, like, okay, what does it feel like to be the backup to this generational player, this guy that you're probably never going to see the field? What does that do to your mental? Like, how does that feel? That's got to be interesting. That'd be interesting.
Reed had a comment where he said, it was during practice, he said, I have 2 plays coming up at the end of this practice stint of probably like a 30-minute stint that they had gone.
What does that do?
And Reed is just like, yeah, I have 2 plays that I get ready. I hope I can get to do them. Of Reed or these backup quarterbacks living their whole practice just for 2 plays, just so that they can show something to get another team to sign them. I feel like that's all very interesting. And yeah, I guess I feel like I'm not getting a whole lot of that, but also like, I wouldn't want there to be them showing a ton of drama, right? Like, if they're showing a ton of drama, maybe that makes it seem like something's going wrong with the Bears, or like, I just feel like it's maybe not making for the most interesting TV. Maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing for the franchise, but as a TV viewer, I think there's could be more interesting stuff. There hasn't been a lot of like unknown players that I feel like I found out about, right? There's been Colin Johnson, who's been a new player that I found out about.
Yeah.
Like, who's another player? Evan Wheeler. But like, who are other people that you didn't know were on the roster?
There's the guy that
This is the lineman,
took his
right?
pants off.
Yeah.
I do agree, though, that it feels like when you're watching it, it feels like a recap of the things you've seen on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a different angle of
It's
it,
like,
right?
oh, I've already seen all this stuff. Like, oh, I know what's about to happen here. Like, I've seen
I've
all
seen this
stuff.
practice clip before because you put it on Twitter.
Yeah,
and
right.
You're just compiling it all, putting nice music behind it, and yeah, I don't know. It's more Bears content.
It's
so
more
it's
Bears
very cool.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing that we're going to hit on is the Bengals joint practice that we had on Thursday, which also leads into the preseason game that we are going to have Saturday at Soldier Field. These joint practices are always exciting. I feel like this is where, like we said in Hard Knocks, you see a lot of drama. And like we kind of hit on before, the Bengals have a different defense than the Bills and the Bears, so kind of gave Caleb Williams a little bit of a different look. And obviously, Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, so interesting to see how we would respond. Joe Burrow with his new hair.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Too. I don't like it. I mean, Joe Burrow, for those uninitiated, Joe Burrow used to have some of the best hair in the league.
He's an attractive looking dude. He's a good looking dude.
Shaved all of it, bleached it. Throwback to his old high school days. I mean,
Maybe he's trying to get some of his mojo back. He's kind of had injuries, trying to get back to those old seasons that he had.
Yeah.
He's had, I think, 2 really good seasons so far in the NFL, so he's trying to get back. Maybe
First season, no. Second,
I think second and third were very
yeah.
good, and then this last season hasn't been great. But
Bengals practice, Caleb Williams, he was doing pretty well. Someone said he had 15 touchdowns and 0 INT.
There's been a rise in these camp stats.
It's like,
I don't
know
like that.
what the heck that means. And I think that had to have been in 11-on-11 because Williams threw a pick his first throw in 7-on-7s.
Oh, really?
But apparently he responded well to that. I've seen clips of him completing big throws to DJ Moore, to Keenan Allen.
And Odunze.
Yeah. So it's nice to see he was able to do pretty well against them. I think what was also nice to see is we got 3 turnovers from Joe Burrow. We picked Burrow off 3 times. Tremaine Edmonds, Kevin Byard, and Greg Stroman, who's one of our corners. And then also Jalen Johnson looked pretty dominant. I saw a compilation of him giving Joe Burrow just some absolute
crazy work.
Headaches. Yeah, gave him crazy work. I had a good play on T. Higgins, just was making plays all over. And I feel like his time has come.
Johnson?
I feel like he's about to get his respect.
Honestly, at this point, I think, I don't even care if he gets the respect anymore. It's like, I know the player who Jalen Johnson is. Jalen knows who he is.
Yeah.
Caleb always said, it's just about the people in the building.
Yeah.
Just the people in the building. This building is the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
We know who Jalen is. If the league can't figure it out, if the league doesn't want to respect him, that's how it is. But Jalen's a beast, and I think you're right. He's gonna have a crazy season this year.
Eberflus also hit on the fact that he respected the Bengals, that there was no fighting. We kept it clean,
classy,
kept it above the belt, had a clean practice, which is nice to see.
Yeah,
that's gonna lead into preseason game that we have coming up this Saturday.
Yeah,
first game at Soldier Field. Caleb Williams, get to see him play with the Chicago fans. I'm excited for another game.
So this is going to be the first time he's playing in Chicago, right?
Yeah, Hall of Fame game was in
Canton.
Ken, yeah. And then the last one was in Buffalo. Connor, what are some things you're looking forward to for this game?
Yeah, I think it's just really cool to see the starters playing again. If we could get a full quarter of play, that'd be great, just to get more opportunities to see Caleb Williams playing. I think it'll be cool, to see a different defensive look than what the Bills are running, which is, as you said, a little similar to the Bears. So seeing different looks for Williams and the offense. I would like to see a little more usage of some of the new players that we have. I like to see Allen and Everett get a little more action, maybe see Swift, see how that all fits together. Obviously, I think that in preseason, you're not throwing out a ton of new. I think some of the offensive stuff is a little vanilla just in general. Across the board, I don't think you're showing a lot of your best stuff in preseason. Doesn't really make a lot of sense, but excited to see some of these new players come out. I also am interested to look a little more at the defense to see how Dexter keeps playing. Pickens had some good plays last game, but I want to see Dexter keep playing well, and then also to see Johnson continue playing. But I'm excited for it for sure. It'll be interesting to see us keep playing against a great pass offense. I want to see us play well in the secondary again with a great pass offense with the Bengals. Yeah.
I think it'll also be interesting to see Velas again, see how he does. Nate Davis also coming back. Interesting to see how he does. And then all those players on defense that were injured coming back. Nice to see everyone back firing on all cylinders.
100%.
I think that's all I got for this episode. How about you?
I think that's all I got, too.
Just for a quick recap, today's episode, we covered the preseason game against the Bills, did our takes on first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks, and then covered the joint practice that we had with the Bengals this year, and then looking forward to Game 3 of Bears preseason. That'll do it for today's episode of the Chicagolandians. Thank you for those who have made it to the end of the episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, why not leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're finding this podcast, maybe YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and TikTok and YouTube at Chicagolandians. We're also, I think this week, going to try to make an Instagram.
About time.
It's a goal of ours.
We've been hearing it. We've been hearing it.
Yeah, a lot of people talking about where those reels. But yeah, you can find us on there. Thank you for listening, and as always, bear down.
Bear down, baby.